So, good morning, everybody. My name is Dan Kraft, and on behalf of everybody at Forum Global, I'd like to offer you all a very warm welcome here to Manama in the Kingdom of Bahrain, and to this, the second annual Global 6G Summit. So after holding the inaugural edition of this conference last year as a fully virtual event, it's fantastic to have the opportunity this year for the first time to welcome delegates here in person. And we have almost 200 of you registered to participate here in Manama. It's great to see you all. It's fantastic to have the opportunity to welcome you all here, and I'm looking forward to having the chance over the next couple of days to catch up with some old friends and to hopefully meet some new ones. And I would also like to extend a very warm welcome to the more than 500 of you who are joining us online for the event via our virtual platform. So we're delighted to also have you all with us, and we look forward to connecting with you virtually, both during the various sessions that we have at the event and hearing from you during the interactive discussions and networking tools that we have available on the platform. Very shortly, it's going to be my honor to officially open the conference and to pass to our moderator, Johan, who's going to be introducing our keynote speakers and our first session. But before we do that, I want to just mention a few things. So first of all, and most importantly, I wanted to say a very big thank you to our fantastic hosts here for this event, the Telecommunications Regulatory Authority of Bahrain. I think it was back in November last year that we initially started talking about working together on a 6G event here in Bahrain. And since then, we've been working very closely with the TRA team on all aspects of the event. And I can honestly say it's been an absolute pleasure working with each and every one of them. And I'm sure as well I can say on behalf of us all how grateful we are to everybody at TRA and, of course, more broadly to the people of Bahrain for making us feel so welcome here in this fantastic country. And yeah, we really are grateful and looking forward to hopefully spending a bit of time to see a bit of Bahrain as well as being here for the event. So to Philip, Ahmed, Bo, Munira, Taiba, Nora, and all the team, shukran. Thank you very much. I also wanted to say a big thank you to all of our sponsor and partner organizations for their support of this event. The logos can be seen on the screen during the sessions. You'll see the logos on the screen for all of our partners and also out in the branding area outside. We really do appreciate the support in each and every one of them, so thank you all very much indeed as well. Next up, for those of you joining online, I just wanted to say a very few short words about the virtual platform and how things are going to work on that side. So the platform for this hybrid event is exactly the same as the one we have used for the virtual events that we were holding during the COVID period, and many of you may have participated at before. So as well as being able to participate and to follow the sessions here on the main stage that you can see at the moment, we also have areas of the platform that enable you to actually get involved in the discussions, to network with other participants, and really to kind of become interactive and really want you to feel part of the event. So on the right-hand side of the screen, you can see an area which enables you, if you go to the chat area, enables you to post comments, to ask questions, and those questions will be passed to our moderator and to our panelists during the full 2 days of the event. So we do invite you to please be as active as possible and do post those comments and questions on the platform there. You can also use that to view participants. There's a list of participants on there, so you can see who else is participating virtually on the event, and connect with them one-on-one. And then on the left-hand side of your screen, you'll see an exhibition area. So you can visit our virtual expo area. We have a number of on-demand videos that are available to watch, where some of our sponsors and partners are presenting some of the early work that has been done on 6G and some of the visions and some of the research that's taking place. So we do invite you to also look at those. For everybody here in the room, you can also view all of the videos that are available there. They're actually on a screen which is being shown out in the refreshment area just outside the room. So please make sure that you do check those out as well during the course of the event. Next up to mention the Wi-Fi for everybody here. So Wi-Fi is available throughout the hotel. There's no password needed. You need to access the network Accor, and you should be able to get online by doing that. And then when you are online, if you are going to be posting any tweets about the event or using social media or wanted to see what other people are saying about the event, you can do that using the hashtag 6G Global Summit. Also, a few words about the device you will all see in front of you on your desk. So you see a device with a small screen in front of you. There's a QR code which will be seen on that screen. You can use that QR code to access the conference proceedings. All of the presentations that are being made at the event will be made available on that QR code, so you can download those from there. Everybody online, you can also access those presentations using the reception area or in the reception area of the platform. Those devices as well in front of you are charging devices, so you can charge phones and I think even laptops using those devices there. So you'll find cables which you can pull out and use as chargers. And yeah, we're reliably informed that those will last the duration of the event. But if anyone finds a flat battery on the chargers, do let us know and we'll be able to change those for you as well. Finally, I just wanted to mention our networking reception. So for everybody here, we're going to be delighted to invite you at the end of the day today to join us for our networking reception, which I'm sure you'll all be pleased to hear is going to be happening out in the sun on the terrace area at the back of the hotel. So really hope everyone's able to join us for that and continue some of the discussions today during that networking session. So we have a very busy 2 days ahead of us. So I think without further ado, I would like to open the conference and to get things started by passing the floor over to Johan Adjovi, a partner at Analysis Mason, who's going to be our moderator for the first two sessions. So once again, welcome everybody. Looking forward to some fantastic discussions, I'm sure, over the next 2 days. And I will now pass the floor to Johan, who is going to pick things up and introduce our first speakers. Johan, over to you.
Thank you very much, Dan. I'm also quite excited to start this conference about this exciting topic. And first, we're going to start the morning with a couple of keynote speeches, first of which will be about setting the scene, moving beyond 5G. What will the road to 6G look like? And it will be by Stuart Cook, chair of the Global Spectrum team at GSA.
Good day, delegates in the room and online. I apologize that I'm not able to be there in person. It's my pleasure on behalf of the GSA, the Global Suppliers Association, to just a minute. Can you hear me now?
We can. There's a bit of an echo, but we can hear you. Try again, Stuart. Hopefully that will work.
It sounds like quite an echo.
What we'll maybe do is Stuart, if it's okay, we will try and get things sorted with our technical team. So maybe we can move straight on to our keynote speakers, Johan, and then Stuart, we will try and get that sorted and we'll bring you back very shortly if that's okay.
That's fine.
Thank you.
Thanks, Dan. And so we have 3 keynote speakers. First of which, Philip Marnick, the General Director at the Telecoms Regulatory Authority of the Kingdom of Bahrain.
Good morning, everybody. Nice to be here. Thank you very much. And hopefully I don't produce an echo, so hopefully it will work as we do it from here. And there should be some slides, if I can magically turn them up. towards the future. There we go. And if the next one somehow. So you don't Bahrain. Thought I'd first of all tell you a bit about in what we do mobile, and therefore on a basis today. This is a mobile market. Echo. So it's a mobile market with mobile players. Like most people, you always try to find out what's the right competition. Here we actually have urban competition, free players. Mostly have equal market shares, but actually different customers in each of the network. We already have coverage of 5G. And if I look on the we're in the sort of 10 for speed. So if you do a speed test now, you'll probably find you'll get about a gig something you can't use your mobile. On the average, top three. So it works fast. But for me, that just gives people the ability to brag about how fast the networks are. What it really means for us is everything you want to do, you can do, and they do. Our mobile data usage is also extremely high. We're probably one of the highest in the world. Each user on their mobile, not just fixed wireless applications, indeed, as mobile usage, is used about 20 gigs of data a month. And that's sort of your average. Obviously, like everywhere else, it's high and some low, but our average is high. We already have a national network, and the penetration here is over 5% of the population take the services, and we're pushing ahead to get all of them connected. Our challenge here, like other people, is actually keeping more and more accommodation, more and more houses of land. So it's like different challenges. So that gives you just a picture of Bahrain. So for us, we are quite advanced in what we do in communication. We're looking to see how we go further, how we can best do. What I thought I'd do though is take a back and see. Ooh. Bang. So mobile continues to evolve, but I think it's quite an interesting story of mobile because we've had global standards for a long time in life. We started in what didn't know was called 1G, then called 1G in the analog world in the sort of mid-80s, 70s, and the 50th anniversary, etc. With different technology, the world being developed. We then moved on to the second generation, which was digital. And again, whilst GSM was the dominant standard in parts of the world, it wasn't the only standard. We had competition between the technologies, CDMA, and in America with D and everything else. In the US, in Japan, we had PVC, and we had a technology called IDEM as well. Just a few technologies. In 3G, it's a number of technology. We effectively got down to CDMA and CDMA 2000. Then magically, we ended up with a single global standard for LTE. Nice name. For those of you who call LTE actually for long-term evolution. What we were looking at is if you build the radio technology, you build on top of future as opposed to necessarily changing. But even then, variants, CDD and FDD. We moved to 5G. The radio technology is the same as new radio. FDD variants. Then we had a bit more complexity. We went into non-standalone mode and then standalone mode. So one built at the 4G and one built without the Anchor doing it. And we're still in the transition from the non-standalone to the standalone versions of 5G. So the world is actually continuing to change as we go through. We then ask ourselves, so were these technologies effective? Did it work? And let's see if we get the slide again. So in the analog world, it worked well. So what did we get in analog? In analog, we got the capability to actually do mobile. In Scandinavia, we had roaming between the Scandinavian standard. In 2G, global mobile came of age. Mobile penetration shot up. We moved from a world where a few people in their cars, people with a very big did it to a world where most of the mobiles in our pockets. 3G was multimedia. And there was lots of hype around 3G. Thousands of the dot-com boom. People thought that actually is phenomenal. But it gave us data, which it gave us data to the world of DSL. The Japanese, of course, had data in the world of 2G. Slightly different. But 4G made a massive change. Digitization of things like wireless was actually just one of the things that drove it. Each of our mobile technologies so far has given us something fundamentally changed the way we do things, the way we do things. And as we go forward, we have to say that. So to answer my question, successful, I would actually say mobile industries ever dreamed of. Its take-up changed the way we do lots of things. But the mobile industry's economics are changing. If you ask people today, do they really see a difference between what they can do on 4G and what they can do on 5G? And when I mean people, I mean consumers. So do customers see the difference? What we think is going to happen with mobile technologies, and luckily, having seen almost every single one of them, what we say it's going to do, the general rule of thumb is that doesn't happen. Something else does. If you look at what we said would happen in 5G with connected cars, with IoT, these things would be phenomenal, the big drivers of doing things. I used to sit in European meetings where the Commission used to always tell us about platooning of cars and things like this. Those things have happened, but in general, they've happened in different ways. I think IoT has been one of the things, but by stealth, has actually happened phenomenally. But there's still a lot of people still waiting for it to happen. But in your homes, you probably find you've got unbelievable large amounts of IoT devices all talking to your Wi-Fi. We've also discovered that actually the take-up of technologies and its use depends on the cost of the basic infrastructure, how much you're paying for using patents. So if you listen to the Wi-Fi community or listen to the mobile community, the cost of Wi-Fi chips is significantly lower than the cost of mobile chips. And we can see how the dynamics of that changes and how they're used and everything else. So it's not whether the technology is good, bad, or indifferent. It's how do we make the economics work. Deployment of new technologies is now actually less driven by a world where people are effectively needing it to do things, but a lot of it is driven by a race to be the first to do stuff. That regions and everyone else is saying, I must get there, and how do I get it done? So it's a world where industry economics is fundamentally changing and doing it. And so the question then raises for me always on these sort of things, is this new technologies an evolution or a revolution? I remember when we were talking about deploying 3G back in the days, everyone told me 3G was a natural evolution of 2G. It was, as long as you bought yourself a new network. And literally you bought a new radio network, a new core network to get it. And our world can't live in that sort of dynamic anymore. So for us, the evolution of technology needs to go through. High bandwidth and applications are increasing. We always need new capacity. We'll always need new spectrum. We'll always need things to make it work. But actually, when you look at where people use things, an awful lot of the high use applications are indoors, not when you're out and about. And we need to think as we look into the future of technologies, how we get the balance right between these things. Because when we look at it in that way, actually things even like spectrum or things like technology, you look in slightly different ways of doing it. New features and capabilities are always needed, but we have to ask ourselves the question, where do we use them and how do you use them? So when we look at 6G, we have to ask ourselves, are we now on the world of continuum of adding new capabilities as we move along, or are we on the world of actually having another big bang of which we do something else? And we have to be real honest, I think, as we go, especially as we think of the economics of the industry sectors we're leading. So what do we need in the future? Our world is already mostly there. Almost everything we do is wireless. Almost everything you do now is wirelessly enabled. We're moving towards a world where it's not just experiencing things and looking at it on a flat screen, but also we're sensing what happens as well. And people talk about how you can sense and how you can see and how you get immersive experience in doing it. We don't wish to be in any way constrained by location. Today, as I move from territory to territory, if I roam, I tend to do slightly less than I do when I'm at home. In different parts of the world, the dynamics of that are different. Computing power and the way in which we encrypt data and the way we use data actually means that some of the predictions of usage actually is done by storage and done later, or by optimizing. People talk about the glasses that you'll use to carry around, and they'll talk to your phone and then communicate. The question for us is, to what degree that is stored locally for you and updated, and the caching becomes very local, or to what degree the network needs to interact. And I think as we move to the new technologies and move on, we need to ask ourselves the question. And people just don't understand technology. And to be honest with you, they don't care. The last bit of technology the general population understood how it worked was the bicycle. And this was at the beginning of the last century. Since then, initially people got worried about what they didn't know. After that, people stopped worrying and just use it. And get a bit of equipment now and you use it and do it. So for most people, it needs to be inside and it's not the hype in doing it. So in 6G, we have a multi-technology world that pulls together. Multiple interfaces and networks that be seen and needed by each other and optimized for what people need to do. Everything pulled together by applications and devices and doing things in those ways. New gatekeepers, not the gatekeepers we see today, but the gatekeepers of the future, will actually be slightly differently. They may not be the network players, they may not be the big internet players in life. There'll be something different as actually putting together your applications and getting it used. And networks are optimized and used where it delivers base. Will we use satellites? Will we use other things? The answer is, of course we will, because there's some places of which the satellite needs to be the delivery element. There's other places where the mobile network is the delivery element. There's other places where your private network is the delivery element. There's other places of how you need to make these work and get the right solution at the right time for the right people. So for me, are we now looking at the world of evolving capability, continuing being created, driven by applications and requirements, as opposed to us sitting and waiting for the next thing to happen, because the next thing is always the thing that's happening tomorrow. And actually in the world we live in, we get on a continuation of our path now in the same way we do. Most of the world's standards for mobile are written by 3GPP. They're issued in release numbers. We're continually upgrading, we're continually doing, we're continually adding. For us, the world needs to move into this way and make sure that the networks and everything else deliver what we need for people, consumers, and the economy, because else we make it work. Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you very much, Philip. You guys might have questions for Philip, but he's coming back. He'll be part of the panel that we'll be having in a moment. But in the meantime, we are going back to Stuart Cook, the chair of the Global Spectrum team at GSA. And Stuart will be taking questions. So if you have questions, keep them for just after. Stuart, can you hear us?
I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Fantastic. Thank you very much. So good day to delegates in the room and online. I must say it really is my pleasure on behalf of the GSA, the Global Suppliers Association, to be able to give our views on 6G, and particularly 6G spectrum. We have a big event, the World Radio Conference, later this year, and 6G, the agenda item for WRC 27, will be one of the hot topics. Next slide, please. This is the GSA. I hope you know about the GSA. Please take a look at our website, investigate Gambod, our database, lots of details and information on there, reports, informing, helping, all open to not just vendors, but SMEs, regulators. We have a lot of regulators and SMEs from around the world that are members. Next slide, please. As Philip alluded, previous generations, I like to look back at what we've done in the past to help guide us and inform us and help steer us as we go towards the next generation of wireless mobile technology. From 1G through to 5G, which is being deployed globally now. You can see that approximately every 10 years, another generation of technology is launched. So the point here is that now is the right time to begin the long-term planning for 6G from around the year 2030 onwards. You know, extreme connectivity, the immersive augmented experience. So let's look back to look forward in terms of how do we get another generation? What do we need to do from a planning point of view for that ongoing success? Next slide, please. I'm very proud the GSA, the vendors and the wider ecosystem is really proud that we don't just talk about the spectrum, the regulations, the standards, but we actually deliver. We successfully deliver and continue to deliver that global IMT 3GPP vision. Over 24,000 different 5G IMT 2020 devices now in the market. Mobile subscriptions continue to increase, and the data per month just continues to expand year after year. 15 gigabytes per month at the moment, average. I was speaking with the regulator from Finland recently, and they were telling me in Finland that is now 60 gigabytes per month per person in Finland. So that provides an indication that demand continues to grow. Next slide, please. As Philip mentioned, 5G is initially being deployed, and it's important to note that we're in the early stages of deployment and rollout, and 3GPP will continue to enhance the capabilities of 5G. So that will continue for many years into the next few decades. So 5G is here to stay and will continue to be enhanced. And regulators, some regulators around the world are now beginning to even discuss expansion spectrum for 5G. So 5G continues, and 6G, that planning, the long-term planning is now well underway. We have a World Radio Conference later this year. The industry is proposing an agenda item for the World Radio Conference in 2027 for 6G IMT 2030. Next slide, please. And so don't worry, I'm not going to go through this in detail, but this is the ITU's timeline and plan for 6G IMT 2030. We're now in that vision, that global framework phase. We then move into the requirements phase and then into the standardization phase in cooperation with the external organizations such as 3GPP. And in that vision research phase, you know, we can perhaps be a little bit cynical, but that's the part where we dream and we let the researchers loose and they think about 6G, what the potential use cases could be. And then as we get towards commercialization in 2030, then it begins to narrow down. So now we're in the research phase. Next slide, please. Next slide, please. And in terms of those research activities, you can see a number of activities, not the only ones. These are just some examples ranging from China through to the United States. Lots of activity now around that research and planning phase, and with the ITU providing that global glue, that global framework. Next slide, please. Next slide, please. If we could go back one slide, please. I'm really excited, and the industry is really excited about what's going on in India. 22nd of March, we had a big announcement, the Bharat 6G Alliance. This is just one example of one country around the world, but you can see the mission, how they're organizing the work in task forces, their objectives, and the phases between now and 25 and 26 and 30. You know, focusing on the research, building up the competences, introducing ideas to the ITU and to the standards bodies, and 6G supporting as a force multiplier, in their words, India 2030. So for me and the GSA, really exciting, really pleased to see this Bharat 6G Alliance contributing into that global 6G debate. Next slide, please. Another example is the United Kingdom. The government there announced its wireless infrastructure strategy, and as part of that, a 6G strategy. So there's a roadmap in the strategy here, but you can see the UK research activities in cooperation with global partners, feeding into the ITU, feeding into 3GPP. We have the World Radio conferences, and then a commercialization plan around 2030 onwards. So 2 examples from various parts of the world and how the governments and the industry, the academia, now beginning that detailed planning for 6G. Next slide, please. So the timing, the standards, what about the spectrum? It's a long-term process, as we all know, and quite a difficult process, contentious process at some points. It's very clear to the industry and the manufacturers that we have to reuse the existing spectrum as much as possible. So 6G needs to be designed to reuse what's there already. A very clear message from the regulators around the world. We would also advocate that we should look at new spectrum and the possibilities of being able to coexist in that new spectrum as well to provide those really high bandwidth services. There's the essential range between 7 and 24 gigahertz. Is there any spectrum within there that we could design 6G to be able to coexist and share with the existing users? The lower, the better within the 7 to 24 gigahertz range, so that we can reuse the existing assets, the infrastructure assets and sites, take advantage of the propagation characteristics. And then there's a complementary range, a lot of research into the sub-terahertz, a potential complementary range that we could also think about. And as the GSA, we're proposing a new agenda item for the World Radio Conference in 27. That ITU providing that global framework again. Next slide, please. And so that's the spectrum frequency ranges. What about how much spectrum? This is a question we get asked as GSA. What are our views on how much spectrum do you really need? And I'm sure Philip will ask this many times to the GSA and other industry segments. We have 3 example use cases: immersive extended reality, mobile holography, and communication and sensing, the combination of those 2. I think it's important to stress that these use cases are not just for indoor stationary applications, they're for mobile wide area applications as well. Those previous generations, looking back to look forward, you know, many people used to say, oh, we just need voice inside stationary. We just need video calling indoor stationary. But that's not the reality. We need it both indoor and outdoor in a mobile environment. And we believe the same is true for these use cases here. And if we take all the capabilities, the requirements, we feed them through the standards equations, we come out with between 500 and 750 megahertz of additional wide area spectrum is needed per network. And that is in addition to reusing what's there already. And it depends on how much is there already in a particular country and how many operators there are. But 500 to 750. Next slide, please. And so to summarize, I think we can clearly see that the research is well underway and that planning for commercialization around 2030 is now beginning to take root. ITU providing that global framework, again in cooperation with the research organizations, the other standards bodies such as 3GPP. 5G continues to evolve and mobile broadband traffic continues to grow at incredible rates, and that will continue. The combination low, mid, high bands continues to be valid. Let's have a look at additional spectrum possibilities within the 7 to 24 gigahertz. The lower the better. Can we coexist? You know, is there a window of opportunity to design 6G to be able to coexist with other radio services? Harmonization, global, regional harmonization, spectrum standards, timings, it remains really important. And as the GSA, we're here to provide technical consideration, expertise, support in terms of that potential WRC 27 agenda item. So thank you very much for the opportunity to share our views. Back to you, Johan.
Thank you very much, Stuart. I would like to invite questions from the audience or from the online audience. In the room, please feel free to raise your hand if you have questions for Stuart. I have a question, Stuart, which is a bit of a complicated one. So I think in the presentation that we've seen from Philip Marnick, there was essentially satisfaction on the fact that from different technical standards in the early generations of mobile, analog having multiple standards, and then an increasing convergence towards maybe 1 or 2 TDD, FDD in the latest generations of mobile. And here, I think you've highlighted also the importance of harmonization, global, regional. But also what we're seeing at a global scale is that there are some trends towards non-converging standards or disaggregation of standards. And I think there's been, for whatever the reason, but it could be for geopolitical reasons, whereby there would be the internet as we know it could actually branch out in some parts of the world to become its closed different environments. So could you see, Stuart, at this stage when we're trying to form a consensus, could you see that we actually fail that we actually result on 1, 2, 3 different flavors of 6G and how to try and avoid this at this stage?
Thank you, Johan. That's quite a question. So from the Suppliers Association perspective, it's absolutely critical or imperative that we keep everything together, right? Both the internet technologies and the wireless technologies, and that combination is a really powerful force for good, in our opinion. And so we do have tensions, that's clear. I think that the ITU, as a United Nations body, one of its primary tasks will be to keep all of that together. And so from the vendors' GSA point of view, in 3GPP, the partners, they're all committed to trying to keep this all together. And I think you'll see a big effort, both in the wireless and the wired world, to do that. I think there are tensions, as you say, but it's incumbent upon all of us, and not just some of the administrations, but many of the administrations, to keep that original ITU vision in place, a global standard. Thank you.
Thank you, Stuart. Do we have any other question from the room, from the audience? Okay, fine. We'll move on. So next, thank you very much, Stuart. Thank you very much for your keynote presentation. So we'll move on to our next keynote speaker, Kostas Masselos, who's the chair at the BEREC. So that's the Bureau of European Regulator. And he's also the president of the Hellenic Telecommunications and Post Commission, as known as the EETT. So please give a warm round of applause for Kostas, please.
Good morning. It is really great to be in the 6G Global Summit and great to be in Bahrain. I would like to thank the organizers for having me here as a speaker in this very interesting event. 5G networks deployment progresses fast in many countries, and most of the mobile operators around the world have started some time now offering 5G services in some form. According to Ericsson Mobility Report, during 2022, the number of 5G subscribers around the world reached the 1 billion milestone, while it is expected to grow to 5 billion by 2028, further enhancing the expectations that 5G will become the fastest adopted wireless technology. 5G has still a long way to go, but of course the work and the discussion on 6G has already started, and this comes as no surprise, as extensive research and development as regards the technical aspects, the use cases and the business models is needed for 6G, as well as decisions about standardization and spectrum allocation. For the next minutes, I would like to invite you into briefly reviewing 5G, 6G intersection points, but also in taking a step back and consider the radio access and mobile technology dynamics, as well as the broader IT and socioeconomics trends that will shape our 6G future. To better envision, understand, and even start planning ahead for 6G. 5G, in my opinion, introduced two radical challenges as far as our radio access planning and overall radio network architecture is concerned. Namely, first, introduced and embraced millimeter wave band use, and second, to some extent, and as a result of the millimeter wave use introduction, asked us to move from our big mast macro cells thinking, promoting instead the use of smaller base stations in spatially ultra-dense deployments. In 5G radio infrastructure, the focus shifts towards millimeter wave-enabled microcells, supporting about 200 users, and picocells, supporting 50 to 60 users, which are to be deployed densely within residential and commercial areas. These two changes we can now take for granted will be the basis our 6G networks will be built upon. And the better we deploy 5G infrastructure along these lines today, the more 6G value we are introducing into them, so the better we protect our investments. The operation of very low power small cell runs, micro and picocells, will be important for decreasing power consumption and avoid quickly saturating cells, servicing many users, a factor that would lead to degraded performance and poor user experience. So beyond delivering high speeds, and maybe even more importantly, the use of millimeter wave micro and picocells is also enabling us to reduce the transmitted power at radio level, could be even 4 times, and of the network overall by 80 to 90%, allowing the development of greener base stations, which could even operate on renewable energy, collected at the point of use, maybe with the use of a small storage, power storage system. There is clearly no turning point back from that network architecture and even beyond higher speeds and lower power consumption, while also, contrary to popular belief, carefully planning the use of millimeter wave, micro and picocells can also contribute in creating safer EMF environments. Through the use of millimeter wave bands and small cells, we can first deploy radio networks with small cell antennas having their radiation lobes along street plane alone, making all non-street plane areas effectively zero EMF zones. Second, through utilizing MIMO beam steering techniques, we can make sure that even for the people moving along a street, EMF emissions will be directional towards the actual radio link user and not uniformly to anyone in the vicinity of. So summarizing 6G radio technology in one sentence, I would say that millimeter wave bands and hyperdense small micro picocells will be for sure the foundations 6G radio technology will build upon. It is also certain that 6G multi-gigabit links will have to utilize frequency bands above 26 gigahertz, above 100 gigahertz and terahertz. Spectrum is discussed, and even though for the technical part we can always rely on the wondrous semiconductor industry for getting the proper pieces of silicon in place and on time for using these frequencies, there are some critical action points remaining for policy planners, decision makers, and telecom regulators. These actions are, first, the development of friendly spectrum licensing procedures. Second, the provision of easy licensing of millimeter wave base stations and small micro picocells with appropriate frameworks for handling passive infrastructure access and rights of way. And third, the support of infrastructure sharing initiatives as an important tool for reducing deployment times, costs, and environmental nuisance, given the base station densities expected for small cells deployment. By summarizing this 6 radio tech in a few sentences and presenting our action points in bullets, by no means I'm suggesting that any of that is easy to do technically or that will naturally occur in the policy and regulatory domains unless decision makers fully grasp and get inspired by how 6G and future Gs align and convert with other broader IT and socioeconomic trends. So I think this summit is extremely important, relevant, and just perfectly timed, since it gives us the opportunity to discuss about exactly these issues. It is extremely important because it bears the weight of 6G vision, which practically means that it bears the weight of explaining the whys of the 6G, but also asks for the requirements. So it's ambitious enough to outline the blueprints of transforming the whys into hows. Having dealt with the hows already, we can now, as promised, take a step back and consider the whys. Why 6G? interpreting radio access network evolutionary generations as purely technical ones gives us little insight on whys and only leave us a strictly technical set of benchmarks to measure and understand progress, with the most recognizable of these benchmarks being speed. Higher speeds as a Y seem to work okay for transitioning from 3G to 4G, and for as long radio access networks were unable to deliver the experience fixed access networks did. For 5G, speed became a much less convincing why, and most probably it will be a totally non-convincing why for 6G. We need a different viewing angle to understand the benefits late 5G and early 6G generations will bring along. My proposal about choosing a different viewing angle to use is using the services and functionalities angle. Since even late 2G radio access networks, progress rode the trends of internet access becoming mainstream and mobile phones becoming the portable, multifunctional computers we call smartphones. The kind of functionality our RANs offer since then and up until now is mostly internet access connectivity service. Our RANs provide BATS, best effort access to information, lightweight web browsing during the earlier days, and content consumption today, heavyweight content consumption today. Still though, there is nothing critical we even today trust on our RANs, no matter how strange that sounds. If you think about it, you still get your keys and your credit card leaving home every morning, additionally to your phone, or at least in principle you accept the risk coupled with not doing so. For new services and functionalities to come through, this needs to change, and this is the most important 6G why. Internet connectivity speeds run their course are selling point strategy. They will of course continue to be important, but in a less profound utility-like manner, and our next set of mobile applications will not need such best effort services, but new, real-time, guaranteed ones. The highest potential such 6G applications in socioeconomic impact will undoubtedly be the autonomous driving and smart city-related ones. Is any meaningful degree of autonomous driving even an option in a BATS best effort network, or can key city-scale utilities be trusted in a network of that type? So why 6G? Because network continuity, latency, predictability, reliability, and resilience need to become network service options. And not only that, they need to become more measurable, transparent, and accessible network service options in providing next generation RAN services to build next generation applications. 6G will not be about new speeds. It will be about new services. It will be about providing the need network fabric that will bring these new services to life, that will make them possible. This apparently simple change from speed focus to quality of services focus will bring sea changes in our economies and societies. It will challenge the status quo and will shake the foundational business models of everyone in the multi-trillion-dollar ICT world, telecom operators, and Web 2.0 companies alike. It will also bring governments and regulators before important decisions, with the most important of them be the preservation of net neutrality. A great sign towards things coming is the difficulty in reaching a consensus on the very simple fact that all types of networks need to be net neutrality preserving, but not all net neutrality preserving networks are of just one type. Translating all that back to 6G network architecture, I would dare to say that 6G hyperdense type of network architecture will be more about reliably picking up low-powered smart city IoT radios due to high proximity to make our cities smarter, safer, and more efficient, and less about beaming 10 gigabit per second of data on a single mobile device. I would dare to say that 6G hyperdense micro and picocell based deployment will be more about promoting always connected connectivity lowering latency and advancing predictability, and less about just supporting millimeter wave propagation. We are currently only scratching the surface of this tectonic shift from speed focus to quality of service focused radio access networks. Our networks will become fully software defined, and 6G will probably be the first generation to accomplish that. That will be 6G biggest why. By becoming software defined, our networks will not only have IP level connections brought up and torn down on demand, they will have physical layer, deep quality of service related features created and disposed on demand, delivering a diverse set of network fabrics for new applications to thrive on, real time and guaranteed. And to handle these network operations complexity, 6G networks will most probably be run by AI, not in the exotic artificial general intelligence sense, but in the practical machine learning sense that will allow insight on extremely multidimensional data sets, which we now perceive as chaotic, like how competing quality of service will coexist in bandwidth-constrained channels. So thank you very much for your time, and please remember 6G will not be about new speeds, it will be about new services. It will be our first fully software-defined run across all network layers, so definitely critical having. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Kostas. I think a lot of words, which I'm sure we'll come back on during the panel that we'll have afterwards. But before we move to this panel, I would like to give an opportunity to Carlos Baigorri, the president at the Brazilian Telecommunications Regulatory Agency, Anatel, to give his keynote presentation. Carlos, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Do you hear me well?
Yes, we can hear you.
Thank you. So firstly, I would like to thank Forum Global for the invitation to speak at such a prestigious event to this very qualified audience. I would also like to greet my fellow keynote speakers, Mr. Masselos and Mr. Marnick. Unfortunately, I couldn't make to Manama in person at this time, but I will make sure not to miss the chance in a future opportunity. Despite being a developing country, Brazil has been at the forefront of mobile communication technologies. We have contributed with research to previous generations and will continue to do so in the 6th generation. Anatel, the telecommunication regulator, has been instigating research in this field by different means, including partnership with universities and the role we play in the Telecommunication Technological Development Fund. Moreover, Anatel has been working with the local industry, leading a working group to advance the development of equipment, both hardware and software, for the construction of truly interoperable, trustworthy networks, and an international initiative under the umbrella of Open RAN. I believe this will continue to be a hot topic in 6G, and we are ready to lead the region in such initiatives. Speaking of leadership in the region, Brazil is the example to be followed in the Latin America when it comes to implementing fixed and mobile telecommunication networks. For instance, Brazil has recently advanced the deployment of IMT 2020 networks on the 3.5 gigahertz band. Currently, the application of 5G is available in more than 60 municipalities, which correspond to all the state capital cities with more than 500,000 inhabitants, and some nearby cities. All in all, more than 72 million inhabitants are now within the area covered by the 5G networks. The deadline to reach all Brazilian municipalities is January 1st in 2026. However, the operators have been very diligent, and we might reach that goal much sooner. Spectrum has also been auctioned in Brazil on the 26 gigahertz for 5G applications, and we hope to see implementation of this technology in the country in due time. Specifically about 6G, Brazil has been very active in the debate that is being conducted by the International Telecommunications Union, ITU. As you well know, The ITU published the IMT 2030 technology trends last January, and it's now working on the IMT 2030 vision, which has been rebranded to IMT 2030 framework. We believe that it's crucial that countries work to have IMT 2030 framework approved next June at the ITU. While 5G is anchored on the prominent use cases like enhanced mobile broadband, low latency, and massive uses of IoT devices, 6G will likely put artificial intelligence at the center of the stage. This move to bring intelligence to the network is mostly welcomed by regulators, given the pressure that operators have been facing because of the lack of balance between the demands for high throughput and super low latency on the one hand, and the decrease in revenues on the other hand. Nevertheless, as a developing country, these more advanced technology scenarios are not alone at the top of our priorities. Understand me, we do not support the industry, we do support the industry in these efforts. However, we still prioritize connecting the unconnected and ensuring that the connection contributes to productivity, citizenship, and education. The 6G technology ought to play an important role in this task. We believe that 6G should set out to be the technology to facilitate the achievement of United Nations Sustainable Development Goals. That means using less energy, but also having more affordable equipment to help bridging the digital divide. To use again the buzzword of the moment, we must bring meaningful connectivity to everyone on the globe, and in that sense, the 2030 timeframe is very fitting. I hope the industry, the regulators, and the extended mobile communication community can join us to achieve this goal. Thank you very much for the opportunity, and see you again.
Thank you very much, Carlos. I think now has come the time for our first panel of the day. So I would like to call all my fellow panelists. So starting with Mr. Philip Marnick. Please come back to the stage and please welcome him with your applause. Kostas Masselos as well, the chair of BEREC, and Alexander Moraes, a regulation expert at the Anatel, the Brazilian Telecommunication Regulatory Agency. As part of our panel, we will also have two virtual attendees, two virtual participants, two virtual panelists, and these are Wen Tong, the Chief Technical Officer at Huawei Wireless, and Isabel Moreau, the Director General at GSOA, the Global Satellite Organization. As you have already seen some of the panelists, but you haven't seen all of them. So I would like maybe to give those whom you haven't seen yet an opportunity to give some introductory remarks. So Dr. Wen Tong, can you please share some your introductory remarks?
Yes. Can you see my slides? Okay. Thank you, Johan. So my topic is 6G is now on the convergence path of a global consensus. This is because the recent ITU activity that internationally all the industry are converging in a common definition of a 6G vision. So next page. So the key is that the 6G is a continuation of the enhancement of a 5G as a communication technology, specifically in the EMBB capability, 6G will continue to provide higher capacity and higher speed to support the new applications in terms of immersive communications, as well as metaverse and the chat GPT-like the high bandwidth demanding, meaning the auto GPT. The other aspect is the extreme communication because of interaction with the physical world, such as robotic and the other industry, high-end industry applications. 6G will continue to provide high performance, high reliability communication connectivities. And then there's a massive machine type of communication, and to connect a more sensory-like or more the massive connectivity in terms of different sensing capabilities. So these are the continuation of a 5G capability and the traditional communication connectivity capability. Next page. However, 6G as well as added new components that will differentiate from the previous generation. And this time, it is so-called beyond the communication capability and the sensing. That means the radio wave are not only used for transmission the bits, but also to sense the physical world. And then this becoming the interface become a digital world and a physical world. So this is the very distinction of a feature of a 6G that will beyond the communication that will beyond the previous generation of wireless technology. And overall, 6G definitely will be enabled by machine learning type of technology, and as well the network will deliver the AI service in the time frame of 2030 to 2050, because AI will be instead of IP will be dominant application, and it will be the common platform for that time of a 6G for 6G commercialization. So next page. In terms of a usage, that is the converged vision of 6G, that the five foundational elements will constitute for the 6G capabilities and the usage scenario. In addition of that, there will be a non-terrestrial communication as well, integrated as an extension of all this service, not only the EMBB service, but non-terrestrial network can provide massive machine type of communication, provide sensing, and provide EMBB and extreme communication as well. So next page. Overall, in addition for the research and the consensus building for 6G, there's a lot of practical proof of a concept of 6G technology are happening and still going on. So I will take here for example, there are many technology trials about 6G is in the early stage, and then we'll move on to large scale trial to validate the technology. Next page. And after this, there will be a standardization process for 6G, and we are very optimistic that it will be on the path of a converge to a global standardization, and all this research activity invested in different country will eventually converge as a 5G truly global standards. That's my talk. Thank you.
Very much, Dr. Wan. Now I would like to give the floor to Isabel Moreau for a few introductory remarks on the 6G vision from the perspective of the satellite industry.
Thank you, Johan. I hope you're hearing me okay.
Yes, yes, we can.
Thank you so much. And thank you, Philip and TRA Bahrain, and also Forum Global. Just like Carlos, and Dr. Wang, I'm sorry that I could not make it in person, but really looking forward for futures opportunities in Bahrain, in particular, with the push for innovation and the digital interest in the country. So I'm Isabel Moreau, the Director General of GSOA. I've only been into the job for 3 months. And I have to say that I really joined the satellite industry 3 months ago because I thought, I couldn't join at a more exciting time to really join this industry. It's going through such a major innovation, a transformation. I heard the director of ITU Radio Communication Bureau a month ago at CPM talk of a rebirth of the satellite industry. And I really do think that we have such exciting times ahead with, traditional services that have been delivered by satellite being now really enhanced with new services that are already happening, such as, IoT and the direct satellite direct to handset, but also so many future services that will be developing further under 5G, but also excitingly looking at 6G ahead. When we discuss the future of global networks, I also have to flag, however, and I've heard it from Carlos and others, that we still have 2.7 billion people that are not online, whether it's due to access, to affordability, or to usability. And this thought is really important today because, more than ever, we should really not consider innovation and meaningful connectivity that we heard about and the future services as something that is exclusive. We really need to ensure that 5G and 6G are not going to create a further digital divide. And the reason I'm saying this is because satellite really has a crucial role to play into this. In a world that is now characterized by increasing data, by mobility, vulnerability to threats and inequality, the reach and resilience that satellite brings to the telecom ecosystem, to telecom networks and services and connectivity overall really are its biggest assets, in particularly when we look at 5G and developing into 6G. More than ever, we need performant, ubiquitous, reliable, and resilient connectivity to address the increased number of natural disasters, for instance, and then climate challenges. But also we need it as the prerequisite for the development of emerging products and services of the next decade. And such services really need to rely on a combination of technologies. And I think we've heard Konstantinos really put an emphasis on this. We're seeing a flourishing industry. Today, fast and direct satellite broadband is making a huge difference in some parts of the world, but so are B2B solutions enabled by partnering with other providers to enable, for example, cellular backhaul or community Wi-Fi solutions. And this is just the foundation of what the future really can become when we look again at 6G. In 2030, the number of satellite broadband users is expected to double to at least 500 million by, as I said, by 2030. Internet access is fundamental for education, healthcare, enabling small businesses to develop, unlocking the potential of 5G use cases. And in particular, if you look at the use of 5G and what will be the use of 6G as well for enterprises. And looking towards 6G, without satellite, it will be impossible really to achieve the levels of coverage and the reliability required. And again, if we don't include all technologies, we risk to not deliver on the benefits that we are expecting for 6G for all. So as an industry, as the satellite industry, we had to work quite hard to convince the ecosystem that satellite had a role to play in 5G and in many different regions, and this was for different reasons. And from its onset, the 5G vision was not simply about more and faster, again, as Konstantinos said, but it was also about bringing together of diverse wireless technologies, whether it's terrestrial, non-terrestrial, to really provide more coverage and enable new services and applications to develop that really required more speed, volume, high availability, and also constant reliability. So we worked, in 3GPP and over 4 on the role of non-terrestrial networks and specifically satellite in 5G. And we managed to secure the clear recognition of 5G as a network of networks as well. So 5G was intended to be much more than just the next G and should have bridged divides and unleashed new potentials for the mass market, precisely by harnessing the power of different technologies and working this, bringing them to work together. So when we look at 6G, the question that is fundamental is how are we going to ensure that 6G delivers on future networks? And I believe the answer starts by learning from what we've done in the past, of course, always, and build better from there. We will not be able to deliver on the possibility of 6G if we do not start from an inclusive understanding of all the technologies. And satellite will be indispensable to provide certain capacities that only satellites can bring to the table and combine this with the capabilities of other technologies. So technology agnostic is really quite important. We also need, to ensure if we want 6G to be a success, that we have the right policy environment. So policies, access to spectrum, and funding initiatives must be designed to be not only technology agnostic, but also technology inclusive, and to ensure that all users have access to broadband services that are the most cost effective for their own circumstances. And we also need to ensure, of course, that satellite has continued access to spectrum at a national, regional, and global level. And this is not only for the traditional services we are delivering now, but really for the services of the future when we think of IoT, satellite to handset, and many other services. So to conclude, I just want to say a few words on also the dimension. The numbers of users of Satcom broadband is expected, as I said, to double by 2030. And this will bring really socio-economical value to the global economy that is quite important. We expect about $52 billion of value with broadband delivery to households, $86 billion if you think of media broadcasting, $118 billion of value with broadband on the move, and so on, and many others, when we start including IoT and new satellite applications. So this is not just about maintaining, our access to spectrum for these services, but also to increase really the increased demand that 6G will bring for satellite services that will require more spectrum, and in particular, as I said, to deliver, the 6G to citizens, to governments, and also to enterprises. So I really do hope that, collaboration, cooperation with our colleagues in the mobile industry, in the Wi-Fi industry, collaboration with governments, with regulators around the world. This is really what is going to ensure the success that we have, a 6G that is technology agnostic and that will really deliver for the needs to all. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you very much, Isabel. And lastly, the last gentleman whom you haven't seen yet, and this is Alexandre Moraes. Yes, can you please, tell us a couple of words about your perspective on the 6G vision, please?
Yes, thank you very much. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes, firstly, thank you for the invitation to be here at Center Stage. I'm very proud to be here with such a prestigious audience and to see some familiar faces and also to make some new friends here in this great industry. I'd like to echo some of the topics that Isabel has just mentioned about the necessity of non-terrestrial networks also on this next generation on 6G. I'm sorry to bring here some academics, but I'd like to mention here the work of Bruno Latour, a sociologist. He used to do some work on science and technology studies, which I think it's very pertinent here, since we are in this developing now these new standards. And I believe his work is pertinent because of what I have been seeing in the development of the vision document, which I believe has been not greatly rebranded framework. I like more the name vision. And I think that we should not let the institutions define the final product. And that's what I believe it's the precautionary tale from the work from Bruno Latour. We should not have the institutions define the final standards. So as we have been doing in the study group 5 in the ITU, it is a terrestrial network by definition. So we're facing a lot of resistance to have non-terrestrial networks in this new standard. So I think I'd like to echo Isabel's talk here and say that we do need the non-terrestrial networks, and of course HIBs and HABs and other technologies also in this new technology.
Thank you very much, Alexandre. I think we'll come back on that a little bit later. So now is really the time when we get to discuss further some aspects of this vision. But maybe before we do that, I think I'd like to share the Analysis Mason perspective. So for those who don't know Analysis Mason, so we are a global advisory firm specialized on the TMT sector. We were founded in the middle of the 80s, at the time when the telecoms market in Europe were getting liberalized, and when the first mobile licenses were getting awarded and the first mobile networks getting deployed. So that's essentially when we got created. And at Analysis Mason, we have people like me, we call them consultants. And what we do is we essentially help our clients to sort some of their pressing issues of growing their top line by revisiting their pricing, or trying to sustain a bottom line by optimizing their costs, or in some cases doing some a network merger or company acquisitions, or doing some spectrum valuation. So we do all those things. And in that context, I can't say that I have a client who's come to me and said, well, what about 6G? Tell me about 6G. Where can I make money on 6G? But at the same time, we also have at Analysis Mason analysts. And our analysts are basically curious individuals, also TMT specialists, whose role and whose mission it is to actually develop thought leadership about some sort of like longer term things that no one has asked them about yet, but they think it will be useful. And in that context, these analysts are developing a vision of what they think 6G should be about. So let me tell you about this and this vision. And I must admit, the credit goes to two very bright principal analysts at Analysis Mason, Caroline Chappell and Caroline Gabriel. So according to Analysis Mason, this whole starts with digitalization. So we live in a world where basically the way that we work, the way we play, the way we interact with each other, the way we transact, the way we buy things has changed, and is going through a change towards more digital, right? And this will continue changing because we're thinking about 6G 2030 onwards, with more digital services, with more digital applications, with more digital interactions, with more digital life, and towards possibly a sort of immersive universes, metaverses, which not only affect consumers, but also capture industrial needs with digital twins, which also capture enterprises with AI-built-driven immersive experiences, and so on. And we see 6G as the glue, as this universal digital fabric which will interweave into virtual worlds and metaverse-like applications and all digital services using cloud-based, AI-driven, cross-domain connectivity. And it's not about yet another radio access network. It's actually about a transformative paradigm shift. Because this universal digital fabric should be about cloud-based, programmable, and converged connectivity that is spun up on demand between clouds, users, and network domains. So that's the vision, very briefly. And as you can imagine, there's lots of slides behind all this in terms of what this means, how this will actually affect some of the value chains, some of the network requirements, and how operators can, or the industry can actually start to get ready for this move away from sort of a dumb pipe approach to more AI-powered, software-driven networks. But I think I'll stop here because this is the Analysis Mason view. Now, I'd like to ask some of our panelists about. I think we've had some of the some visions, right? So some different visions. And when you look online, there's been a number of companies that have, in particular, well, I would say, vendors, network vendors, that have issued their perspective on the 6G vision. But now it's about creating consensus. So I think maybe for Dr. Wen, what do you think about the approach to creating consensus and the challenges of just building consensus towards this vision? Is there anything that you can share with us on this consensus building approach that we're in the middle of at this early stage of 6G?
Yes. So the consensus building is a tradition for this industry, especially for the mobile industry, and it's not something new. And this is a practice for 3G, 2G, even 2G, 3G, 4G, 5G, and now 6G was running the same process of consensus building. At the moment, before the standards is created, this is a pre-competitive stage that the whole industry, the academia, the research community, the operator community, and the regulatory community created all different kinds of regional and even global research program and organization to study the technology and build the vision and to research what is the 6G use cases and what it will be the 6G capabilities. So in that case, we see many government-sponsored public program in Europe, in China, in US, and in Asia, different countries. So these are the foundations of the cross different sectors of the community to come up with a common vision. So that's the step one. That is so-called the definition of the 6G, to answer what is a 6G. And this is the process. And then there will be a technology evaluation, comparison, validation before we enter in the standardization process.
Okay, thank you very much, Dr. Wen. Another question that I thought, because your presentation mentions a lot about artificial intelligence and the role of, and I think it's been also discussed a little bit today in terms of the machine learning and so on. So at the moment, I would say that at the moment, in 2023 today, we're seeing a lot of everyone's, you're talking about artificial intelligence with the development of ChatGPT and the impact that it can have on a number of different things. So, but at the same time, we're saying, 6G will be powered with AI. But are we going to have to wait until 2030 to see AI in the networks? Or can you maybe tell us about some innovation and some of the steps that might come before that in terms of AI integration in networking?
Yeah, so fundamentally, our vision for 6G is 6G is the interface or the platform or the fabric between the physical world and the digital world. So that is the neural system to connect the physical world and the digital world. And in that case, 6G network will be enabled by machine learning type of technology. More than this, it will be the platform to deliver the AI as a service to anywhere, any person at any time, not sometime or some cases or some places. So that's the essence of the power of a mobile technology. So the AI in the 6G timeframe will not only for certain, the chat GDP as we know today as a text level, will be like something like an auto GPT. That means the people can automate and control the other side of the physical world by means of artificial intelligence or intelligence robot. And in that sense, the smartphone may disappear and the robot as a companion or butler for you as a personal assistant. So these are all exponential applications in not only in one specific, as an EMBB we see in the LTE as an exponential and the voice as an exponential growth in the 2G cases. It will be many, or everything will be amplified by the power of the AI service like ChatGPT like. So in that case, the 6G will be the platform to deliver those services. So from that point of view, you can see the 6G will be the neural network in terms the action from the digital world to the physical world. So the sensing capability of 6G will be the physical world to the digital world to provide a massive data to enable the machine learning. So that's more or less the model in 10 years horizon. And then it will be a gradual service for sure. 5G will start to integrate the capability of the AI and machine learning, but 6G will be a native platform. It is designed as a day one to enable this.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Dr. Wen. I think that's really interesting because it actually reminds me of a joke that I had with a friend of mine who was in the computing industry, and he was asking like, but computing is networking is what enables computing, because networks basically enable distributed compute and so on. I said, no, it's the opposite. Networks are actually enabled by computing, because inside the networks, you need like computing and so on. So, and it's the same with AI, is what you say, is that AI will actually be enabled, distributed through the 6G and networks, but also embedded into how 6G network might work. So that's really interesting. Thanks, Dr. Wen. Now I'd like to go to you, Isabel, because I think you very clearly articulated the points about the importance to have if I use my own word, to enable this universal digital fabric by stitching together different networks, some of which might be terrestrial and some of which might be non-terrestrial. So, but so far, what have been the main achievement that you've seen in terms of satellite and terrestrial network collaboration? Can you tell us more?
Sure, thanks, Johan. Look, I'm a firm believer of this integration happening, and this is one of the reasons why I joined, the satellite industry, and having the background in both industries, I think, is something that is highly valuable. I would say one of the things I've observed at the Mobile World Congress this year, is, I come from that industry. I was at the GSMA for 15 years. I've done the Mobile World Congress for 20 years more. The thing that struck me this year the most is the presence of satellite at the show. So not only on the sort of exhibition where, we had a lot of the big names of satellite that were present, but also part of the discussions, on the panels, part of the ministerial program where you had, Doreen from the Secretary General of ITU, you had the chairwoman of the FCC, and many others, Anatel and other regulators and governments mentioning the importance of satellite at the mobile broadband show par excellence. So for me, this was really clearly already what we are seeing that is happening, and something that will be very much strengthened in the future. Now, if we look at what has been happening concretely, our members, our GSO, our members have been working to make sure that the building blocks for the integration between terrestrial and non-terrestrial systems are established. We've been at 3GPP involved in the work of 3GPP for a long time, so that we establish these building blocks, if you want, to enable end-to-end services across different verticals. And I mention again the word verticals because verticals is going to be the key, and collaboration, not only in the ICT ecosystem, so the whole value chain of our industry, of the telecom and ICT industry, but really our collaboration, our work, our partnerships with vertical industries in automotive, healthcare, finance, agriculture, you name it, others, that is going to be really the key. Since we started talking about 5G, we've seen multiple examples of how satellite can improve citizens' life. With 5G, we had services such as Sat 5G, 5G Vini, and many others. And I had myself the great pleasure 2 weeks ago to visit the European Space Agency here in Harrow in the UK, where I experienced with my colleagues really firsthand the power of 5G services and demos and areas that we are going to explore. Our members themselves, they do not stop. They continue to explore different ways to evolve, and each of them is really looking. And I think that's really the beauty of, how as we look forward at 5G and 6G, is that each of them is going to really look at models, business models, partnerships, and opportunities that are really key to their own services. So, a successful example. SES partnered with IBM and Microsoft Azure, for instance, to optimize the delivery of large video files using the cloud, whilst others like Immersat Cloud Partnership focuses on delivery of industrial IoT-based solutions to verticals like agriculture, mining, transport, and logistics. Others, such as Intelsat, another global operator, also partnered with Microsoft Azure to help its enterprise customers extend the cloud-based applications to whether they need in the world. You asked about examples. If I turn now to more the sort of mobility, We've seen Hispasat and partnering with O2 and the European Space Agency to develop the Darwin project, which is a connectivity solution using LTE, 5G, satellite for connected and autonomous industrial vehicles. So there are many examples that we have and that we've seen, and I think, as you said, as we go into our AI-powered, software-driven solutions, we'll see a lot of these examples become more enhanced.
Yeah, that's quite encouraging. So now I'd like to move maybe to you, Kostas, to give us the regulatory flavor still. So as chair of the BEREC, so how do you think, because 6G is one of the future networks, right? So how do you think they should be approached from a sort of a policy and mostly regulatory perspective, right? So are there things that you want to share with us?
Yeah, thank you. Maybe I would start from 5G and give an example how BEREC approached the 5G from a regulatory perspective, and then see if this can fit also for the 6G case. So what we did for 5G, BEREC started working on 5G in 2017. In 2018, we focused on the new business models introduced by 5G, and also discussed issues quite relevant by that time on spectrum assignment processes, coverage obligations, infrastructure sharing issues. Then in 2019, we identified for the first time issues that might need regulatory intervention in the future. In the end of 2020, BEREC established the 5G radar, which is a tool to monitor developments in the 5G ecosystem and identify, again, issues that might need some regulatory intervention in the future. And we continued working like this till the end of 22, when we published our 5G ecosystem report that identifies the key players, the revenue streams, the cost structures of 5G, the value proposition, and again, an evaluation of whether we need to regulate at this stage or identify issues that could be interesting for regulation in the future. I think this approach says we should not rush early in the technology introduction phase to apply regulation, to introduce regulation, but let the technology evolve and then see if regulatory intervention is required in the future. I believe for 6G we should do more or less the same. So we need to very closely monitor the evolution of the technology of 6G. We need to be close to the technology developments, but on the other hand, we should not rush and regulate the new technology, allow it to mature, and then see if indeed there is a requirement for regulatory intervention. The idea of regulatory sandboxes is important. So create a safe environment for the new technology, monitor the developments, and wait and see if there are critical issues to be regulated.
Yes, and I think this ties in quite well with the usual sort of, I would say, EU approach of aiming for light touch regulation, as well as finding the right balance between stimulating innovation versus controlling or stifling. So that's a good segue into this aspect about innovation, into the question about this innovative technology. So Europe was very much the home of 2G GSM, so which is Europe grown, right? So and then there's been some also, I would say, geopolitical aspects in relation to the development of the digital technologies in the last decades or so. But now for 6G specifically, given the objectives of EU with the 2030 digital compass, which replaces the former digital agenda for Europe. Where do you see, what are the key aspects of European policy that you want to get translated into the development of the 6G vision?
Yes, indeed. European Union, in the context of the Digital Decade Policy Program, has defined very ambitious ICT strategy, objectives, and a roadmap towards 2030. And this includes also connectivity and future networks, so this fits very well with the 6G evolution. 6G is going to be a comprehensive network platform, digital platform. And according to the European Union strategy, this digital infrastructure should be used as a platform to address society challenges. For example, epidemic control, COVID pandemic was one case, but also reducing poverty, reducing inequalities, addressing climate and environmental challenges. Let me remind you that the European Green Deal calls for very ambitious objectives as well. European Union should become a climate neutral region by 2050. And this means a lot of effort in reducing energy dissipation, CO2 emissions, etc. And of course, we want to have sustainable economic growth. All these platform objectives, strategy objectives, strategic objectives of European Union should be reflected in the 6G vision. So, of course, as we already discussed, 6G vision and requirements are still under discussion and consensus is to be reached. So this is the time for European Union as well to translate these strategic objectives into specific aspects of the 6G vision. For example, 6G should be a sustainable infrastructure, reduce energy, reduce environmental impact, reduce CO2 emissions. 6G should balance between digital technologies development, but also social responsibility, data privacy, security. 6G should also bring closer together the research efforts also taking place in Europe with sustainability development goals to address this social part of our objectives. And of course, 6G vision should allow exploiting the capabilities of 6G technology to allow development of digital economy and sustainable economic growth. So there are requirements that in line with European Union strategy that should be integrated in the 6G vision.
Okay. And Alexandre, I think so as you guys prepare your questions, you'll be given an opportunity to ask questions very shortly. And I have already received a few questions from our online audience. But in the meantime, Alexandre, I think we talked about sustainability, and Brazil, I would think, is being the lung of the planet, as we used to say. Is heavily affected by sustainability and global climate change. So do you think that in the current trend, in the current vision that's been formed so far and discussed on Working Party 5D, where you've made the contribution, does it sufficiently take into account the sustainability objective and the sustainable development goals?
Well, I think that thus far it has been on the trend of just the energy saving, and in our understanding, that's not quite enough. We believe that we should have this overall objective to connect the unconnected, and that is aligned with the UN's Sustainable Development Goals. And I believe that should be an overall goal from the global community and also of the industry to try to reach the unconnected with meaningful connectivity. And I think we should not miss the opportunity in this next standard in 6G.
Okay. Thank you, Alexandre. So, Philip, one thing I particularly liked and noted and agreed on the fact that that you mentioned in your speech was the fact that we never get it right. So whatever we thought about the technology, well, it means that 10 years down the line, something different will come out of will come out of the egg that we've been sort of preparing and we've been working on. So does this mean that this effort is useless? Does this mean what should we what should it mean for how we develop the technology today, knowing that something different will come out of it in the future, in the end?
I think it's an interesting conundrum, because a lot of the things that people talk about what's in the technology, we're actually seeing today. I live here in a almost online digital world. I don't use money anymore. I use online. Everything I have, even the government is now issuing passports here, online. So everything is with you in your mobile phone. I think you mentioned leaving your house. You take your keys, you take your wallet. Actually, you don't need to. Your phone does those things for you. And as we've said before, we need to live, therefore, in an unbelievably connected world and do it. The GSA gave a great example of a hologram of doing something. In the first series of Star Trek, which was in the late 1960s, Mr. Spock had a holographic display of a classical music concert, which he was watching. I've personally been sitting waiting for that to arrive since then, because it will give you the ability to enjoy your music and to do things. It's always been coming, but never quite gets here. And you have to ask yourself the question is that because the economics are not there, or is it because the technology can't do it? And to a certain degree, it's a bit of both. I think as we look forward, we always need for new technology a vision of what things can deliver. But then we've got to develop the technology that facilitates and enables innovation to enable people to do it. So we need to get, like most things here, the basics right. The basics need to be good coverage at affordable prices that people can genuinely use. And as Isabella said, in areas where you don't have good coverage, find solutions to deliver coverage in those ways and use the technology that's appropriate to doing it, as opposed to sitting waiting for something else to happen. We talked about AI enabled, but today, most of the things we do are in the cloud. We see AI being used to drive and drive other things we're doing. We're just building and continuously expanding and doing. And therefore, for me, it's have the vision of what you think things might be, but actually not get too stuck on them, but make sure the technology can develop and deliver the capabilities to enable new innovation to come along, to enable us to live in the better world. 2030 is a long way away. A lot of the things we talk about are things that people want today, tomorrow, and actually have. We're not waiting that long for them. By the time we get there, it will be something else that's the key thing for what we want to do.
Thank you. And now, if we zoom on the GCC, if we zoom on this region that we are in currently, as you mentioned, in Bahrain, as well as in some of the neighboring countries in the GCC, 5G is already deployed at very high level with very high coverage, and the GCC in general has been really at the forefront of this 5G rollout. So what about 6G? Is the GCC also trying to be in the driving seat regarding the 6G technology development? And are there any specific challenges that we need to think about as we develop the 6G vision?
Yeah, I think you're right. The GCC, all of the GCC countries have all got visions of 2030 and a bit, and actually have been very, very strongly driving digitization, digital cities, smart cities, online, doing it, getting it on and doing it. And most of the countries here, you said, have got 5G, and we deployed 5G ahead of most of the parts of the world and continue to do it. And people are investing in technology and building and continuously building on top of that. So yes, the GCC people are very actively engaged in looking at what comes next and how we use it. Do we have any particular challenges here? Actually, our challenges are slightly different to other people's. One of the big challenges here, and I talked about in buildings and on building, people in these regions don't particularly go outside very much. We go out in our cars and we go things, but actually most of the things that happen here are happening indoors and happening in places where people are doing it. And therefore, when you're developing the technologies, you have to think about what the solutions are for what people are using it. It's slightly different to other parts of the world and other ways of doing it, and make sure that works. And all of those things need to be built into the design of what you're trying to get to, which means we have some really good innovative solutions for different things that other people could probably learn from, but people tend in some of the bigger regions not to look at this region as an area to learn from. And I think that's a mistake for some parts of the world to think about. And there is a lot that we can do here. So yes, there's been much activity in this region. The region, though, is not the same everywhere. And if I look, we'll get some talks from some other of the Arab states a bit later, where the challenges are slightly different than the challenges in some of the Gulf states. And again, you've got to make sure that the technologies we're doing and the way it's being done is for real people, not just imagined.
Yeah, thanks, Philip. So, which is an excellent segue to one of the questions from our online audience, from the Communications Regulatory Authority of Tanzania. And I'll leave either of you 5 to see whether you want to take that question, which is about developing countries. What is your advice to developing countries that are still working on 2G coverage, while some developed countries are prepared for 6G? So does anyone want to take that one? Yes, Philip?
I think it's, and I think one of the things I was trying to make is that when I talked before, is that's why I think this needs to be an evolution, not a big bang. You know, we need to make sure that we realize the economics work for everyone to be able to get the latest technologies and for us to use it. We also need to think, and I think as was said before, one of the things we're looking at is autonomous vehicles. You know, if I drive my car, I don't want to get to the Tanzanian border and stop, because it hasn't got XG. And actually, the car manufacturers don't want to do that. So car manufacturers are developing autonomous vehicles which have lots and lots of sensors and lots of other things, and to a certain degree don't rely upon networks to do it, because actually the networks will run out. So I think we've also got to make sure that actually we understand the challenges of these countries and help and do some things to help and push forward. But also we do the challenges when we're developing applications and actually realize that everything we do has to work in most places for most of the time.
Okay. Yes.
Yeah, maybe a very short comment for colleagues from Tanzania. International collaboration is important. So electronic communication, the volume of electronic communications keeps increasing between regions in the world. And this field, electronic communications, should be seen from a global perspective. So we need international cooperation. We need to discuss cross-border issues, but also common issues, and see the technology trends and see also the business and market trends. So platforms like ITU and the events by ITU, but also events like this one today, the 6G Global Forum, are excellent platforms to bring together stakeholders and give opportunities for meaningful connections and know-how exchange and discussions to solve problems.
Yes. Alexander, do you want to add perspective as well?
If I may have a suggestion, is to build upon the experience of other countries, as he has just mentioned. I know ITUD can be used as a platform for this, and they are quite able to help developing countries. And I can say this as a member of a developing country. And if I may have one suggestion, is to build upon the experience of others and maybe use the ITUD platform.
Thank you. We have time for one final question. So if you have a question for our distinguished panelists, you may raise your hand. If not, we will close here because we are just on time. So do I have a hand raised over there? No. So I think it's been a fascinating discussion, right? So I think we've heard a lot of the challenges in relation to developing that 6G vision based on building on what is currently here in terms of some of the challenges for affordability, coverage of technologies and different starting points based on the countries. Also, we've heard of some of the regulatory considerations and some approach to regulating those future networks. We've heard about the need for this universal digital fabric, which includes the terrestrial as well as the non-terrestrial, and all that needing to be driven in a consensus, which is not always an easy thing, but needs time and effort from the various stakeholders, including at UN level, ITU, and there are some good processes for that. So I think it's going to be fascinating to see how the new works of the Working Party 5D, with whether it's a framework or a vision for 6G, what it will come out, and how the technology will develop, and on the various different aspects with the WRC coming up later this year. It's going to be a journey. It's going to be, I'm sure, a fascinating journey, and that's why, as an industry, all of our energies will be required to come to this consensus, to come and to make that technology come to life in a commercially viable, because that's also one of the things that we've discussed today, commercially viable manner. And that's going to give us lots of things to work on and to look forward to in the next couple of years. So please join me in thanking our 5 distinguished panelists, and I think we will move to lunch.
So thank you very much to Johan and to all of our panelists, to those who joined us here in person, and of course to Isabel and to Wentong, who've joined us virtually. So thank you all very much. And as Johan said, a really fascinating discussion. So really do appreciate that. Thank you all very much indeed. So we are now moving to lunch for those of us here in person. So lunch is being served just out on my left, your right-hand side. So you'll see it's the room next to where the refreshments were. There's a seated lunch being served in there. So I'd like to invite all of our delegates who are joining us in person to go and make your way now to lunch. And for everyone joining us online, you also have a short break. As I said before, please do remember to check out the expo area, the on-demand videos that we have available there. There's an opportunity now during this break to check those out and to see some of the work that some of our sponsors and partners are doing on developing that 6G vision. But as I said, lunch here, if I could ask everyone to be back here at around about 25 to the hour, so just under an hour, and we'll be back for the first of our afternoon sessions, which is going to be focusing on standards, so looking at kind of pre-standards research and coordination and how we can work towards a coordinated global 6G standards. Thank you very much, everyone. Enjoy lunch, and we'll see you back here shortly.